Servus! Willkommen zurück zu Witch and the Holy Night. Oder Maus no Yoru. Oder Mahoyo. Wie ich noch abgekürzt wird. Dann machen wir weiter. In der Szene, die wir...
俺もどうかと思うけど、店長の言うことだから、もう笑顔で乗り越えてくれ。これも商店街の明日のためなんだとよ。本気で申し訳ないんだが、雨も止んだし、なんとか行ってきてくれないか？
Okay.
帰ってきたら晩飯おごってやっから。
So, Giro bekommt einen Auftrag. His bright orange coworker claps his hands together as if to beg for forgiveness as he settled with this unreasonable task. "10 years ago, Misaki City was a town of farm and woodland. But everything has changed. The front of the station was now lined with tall multi-story buildings, and the residential areas were similarly full of apartment complexes. The once rusty scenery around the station had become a thing of the past." Shiroinuska was the only place in the city that still contained vestige of the old town, a pocket of the past inside an urban jungle. The road extended up a conspicuously high hill to an old residential district far from the hustle and bustle of the train station. Long ago it had been considered unwise to build on high ground, so nobody lived above a certain elevation. Shiroinuska, sitting as it did atop a hill in the middle of a town, was no exception to the convention and had no residence to speak of. The asphalt continued for some time, eventually giving way to mountain road that was swallowed into a cover of trees. A lone vending machine stood to mark the boundary between town and beyond. Even children knew that there was nothing beyond the new playground in development that so enthralled them. Well, that was not terribly true. There was nothing besides the haunted house. Kurosaki traversed the long slope. Below her, she could see the hull of Misaki. The symmetrical town looked like a miniature set from high. It would look like a painting if there had been a sea next to it, but unfortunately Misaki City was very much landlocked. But it was overcast at the moment. The scene was quite breathtaking on clear evenings. The view was the one thing that made the outdoors climb worthwhile, and today she had been denied even that.
雨の日は自転車も使えないし、1日に2回ぐらいバスでも通ってくれないもんかな。
I could be using this road to get to school for almost 2 years now, but the journey had never gotten easier.
あれ、鍵閉まったまま？アリス、まだ帰ってきてないんだ。
With a very shrug, she put a hand on the rusty iron fence. Quietly, the heavy gates swung open as if to welcome her home. This is atop that hill, a haunted house. This is how the story much shared around town used to begin, but fresh rumors about these houses sprang to life almost as fast as the town modernization. Despite being dilapidated and abandoned for many years, light can be seen inside the house at night. An angry murder of crows often gathers atop the hill before mysteriously vanishing. Children get lost in the fog, never to be seen again. Late at night, shrieking sound can be heard all the way to the town. This particular piece of slander was the one Aoku wished to discredit the most. The final rumor was of an eye-catching luxury car that sometimes made its way up down the hill. The rumor spread and grew by the day. And while it grew, the house that everyone thought had rotten away was restored over the recent years. Deep in the woods, on top of a hill, no one dared to approach. Like a ruin, shrouded from view, even on the brightest of days, stood a relic out of time, a building from a fairy tale. The house. Hier Immer zocken Matus Menschen, was the Kuronji Menschen, Kuronji Menschen. Everyone in town knew about the witch's house on the hill. The unabashedly haunted house where Aoku Osaki resided for reasons unknown. Needless to say, it was not really haunted. The Kuronji family home was a grand western-style mansion with a long and storied history, stretching all the way back to England. It was too small to be a dormitory, yet too big to be called a house. The main building contained as many as 3 normal houses worth of rooms, and was surrounded by a large, all-encompassing courtyard. The perimeter of ground was surrounded by a high iron fence, covered in thorny vines. There was also an annex to the main building. Given such extravagance, it was no wonder that it inspired rumors. To the surrounding residents, the mere existence of such lavish and out-of-place mansion on top of a hill was a cause for suspicion. Rumors, lies, and slander were the places to be paid for fame. With only 2 lodgers, it had been to disagree with the perception that vampires must be living here. Ich muss sagen, ich habe Mitleid mit dem Gärtner. She put her hand on the front door. It was a grand double door that would have paired well with a brass lock, and yet it was secured with little more than a simple keyhole. Pushing open with one hand, she entered the supposedly haunted house. And, by the way, if vampires were not enough to scare you, ghosts were known to appear on certain nights. Ich habe keine heroic spirits. Much like the weather outside, the foyer was overcast with shades of grey. Perhaps by deliberate design, the architect had chosen not to include any lights in the entrance area. The ceiling was 2 floors high. The only light in the room came from the skylight. It was particularly gloomy on rainy days. On moonless nights it was like the world itself ceased to be. I considered the drawing room to the east would be a good place to rest, but knowing that she would not be able to relax until she changed clothes, she shouted up the stairs. The stairs curled up the way to the 2nd floor hall. There was a 3rd floor attic as well, accessible from the far end of the hall. She had never been set foot in there in the 2 years she had lived here, though. The Kuronji mansion was more or less divided into the 2 wings, east and west. Urk had been given the entire east wing, but 2 rooms were more than enough as far as she was concerned. She had no desire to open a door that would trap you in a storybook world or lead to an attic that had only been used for storage these last 5 years. Ich muss sagen, die arme Putzfrau. Urk's room was at the end of the east wing, long corridors. She had elected for a smaller room for no other reason other than that she thought it would be easier to clean. It was furnished with a large bed, her beloved mahogany desk, a wardrobe, and a chest for clothes, and 2 9-shelf bookcases. That was all she brought with her from home. Her entire life of 16 years reduced to this. She borrowed the next room down for her own purpose.
そうだ、アリスにもらった見張りと壊れてないかチェックしないと。
Watchtower. She needed to see if the project she had been working on all night had borne fruit. The study next door served as proof of the life she had been living for the last year and how different that life was from the one she had lived before. It was not a room for the person she had been. It was a room for the person she would eventually become. A place of solitude that only she could enter. Or so she thought.
壊れてるどころか跡形もなく消え去ってる。やっぱ自己流アレンジはまだ早かったか。いいわよ、笑いなさいよ、コマ撮り。
The noisy neighbor that had intruded upon us century flew away. While not exceptionally talented, Oko did not lack for effort and was not afraid to fail. One could have almost mistaken her approach for optimism. She changed her outfit out of uniform and returned to the first floor. Downstairs she opened the door to the east wing, into the corridor as dark as a cellar. The absence of windows meant it was pitch black without the lights on, so she flicked the switch and entered the nearby doorway. It had been her idea to update the drawing room. The walls were decorated with extravagant patterns, and around the room were large majestic sofas and a luxurious Persian rug. Amidst it was all a 30-inch television that seemed completely out of place. It stood looking over the furniture like the empire with no clothes. The mansion owner would have rather done without it, but a commoner like Oko, it was an essential commodity. Dad fought over its presence at first, but eventually came to an agreement, and now mutually enjoyed the modern comfort.
なんだ、人のことは言えないか。うちも案外時代錯誤な家だった。
Now, in somewhat pleasant mood, she decided to brew some tea. She boiled some water in the kitchen, prepared a teapot, and made herself some black tea. Interessant, dass Oko nicht von Anfang an der Meinung war, aber ja, es hat ja auch eine ältere Schwester. With a flop, she sank into the sofa. She took a sip of her tea, then another. Lulled by the ticking of the clock, she took the first sip as she pondered how to spend her afternoon. The sofa almost seemed to be inviting her, and she sank even further into its comforting embrace. Oko barely opened her eyes as she lifted her body up from the cushions. This was no dream or delusion. At some point the girl had sat down across from her. Not the least bit surprised she reached her teacup, but the tea within had gone completely cold. Anscheinend! She asked a question to the girl on the other side of the table. The girl answered without lifting her gaze. When silent, she could have been mistaken for a beautiful doll. The girl sitting on the opposite sofa was reading an old book. She had delicate limbs and pale white skin. Not a hint of humanity emanated from her melancholic aura. She had a dark hair than Aoko, and her icy eyes were focused on the pages in front of her. Her clothes resembled that of a nun, but were actually her school uniform. In Aoko's humble opinion, the gloominess suited her. She evoked something like out of a painting. There was something unreal about her, as if she were frozen in time. Das stimmt. The white on her neck was so lovely that even Aoko found herself enchanted by it. The girl was one of the haunted house 2 residents. Her name was Alice Kuonji, and she was the same age as Aoko.
私どれくらい寝てた
？1時間と少し。ここで眠ると風邪ひくわよ。
Alice answered indifferently, nodded above at Aoko, who was now used to it. She looked at the clock on the wall and thought it was already 7. She had been asleep for 2 hours. The day had been a rough one for her, and she had slept little the night before, so it was no surprise that she had dozed off for as long as she had.
起こしてくれてもよかったのに。せっかくの紅茶が冷めちゃったじゃない。
私が来た時はもう冷めてたわ。
でしょうね。行ってみただけよ。
Aoko drank down the rest of the cold tea in one gulp. In the poorly heated kono, she mentioned it was more than enough to clear her head and wake up.
こうなるとフォートナム&メイソンも何もないわね。おかえりアリス。玉の贅沢もあんた抜きじゃ閉まらないってことかしら。今日は薬日か天中殺か。ちょっと早いけどお参りってのも十分ありかもね。
Aoko shrugged her shoulders, resigning herself to her fate.
それで何があったの
After 2 years together, they knew each other quite well. Aoko had one way of asking questions, and Alice had another. Alice asked without raising her head, and Aoko gave further details.
まず謝らなくちゃいけない。昨日徹夜で完成させた例のあれ、意味がなくなっちゃったのよ。ちょっと目を離した隙に沸騰しすぎて壊れちゃったみたい。そうならないよう循環のコードを 2,3 本外したり縫合したりしたんだけど。
Aoko tried to laugh it off as it was someone else's problem.
どういうこと？
今朝休養が入って学校に呼び出し受けたの。そこで転入生の世話を押し付けられて一日が無残にも消費されちゃって、帰ってきたら跡形もなく消えてました。怒るアリス。
別に青子の器物破損にいちいち怒っていたら一生分の口論をすることになるでしょう。代用品はあるからまた一から始めればいいわ。それより怒ってるのはあなたの方じゃないの？
Ich liebe ihr Gesicht. Alice was very much on point today. It was true that despite her outward appearance, Aoko was seething in frustration. That aside,
この転入生っていうのがひどくずれててね。すごい山奥で暮らしてたらしくて、こっちの常識が通じないんだから。三問以下って言葉があるけど、あれって本当のことなのね、アリス。
Alice raised her head in response to hearing her name, but Aoko kept going on before she could get a word in edgewise. Aoko, after all, expected no sympathy in the first place.
初対面から尺に触るやつだったけど、教室を案内した時なんか失神しそうになったわ。そいつ教室で教師と1対1で授業を受けるもんだと思ってたらしいの。それはそれでまだ流せる。許容？ で、私が簡潔かつ丁寧に教室の何たるかを教えた後で、そいつにそれで青崎、他の教室は何に使うんだですって。教室に他のものないでしょ。
A classroom is a classroom. A classroom is a classroom. Oh Mann, oh Mann, oh Mann. Ich muss mich erstmal... Ah, ich liebe diese Zitate. Ich muss kurz was auf Facebook posten, tut mir leid. Aber... Ich mag diesen Verein einfach. Servus Spooky. Danke für die Erinnerung.
なんていうか、そいつは少しでも説明を怠るとそのままで納得しちゃうのよ。何も疑問に思わないというか、想像力が欠如してるっていうか、想像することに慣れてないっていうか。まあ一度言ったことはちゃんと分かってるっぽいからバカってわけじゃないんだけど。
あなたが人を批評するのは珍しいわね。そういうダメな人気にするたちだったの？
みじんたりとも気にしないわよ。けど明日からどんな間違いをしでかすのかちょっと心配なだけ。
Wie einfach spontan aus dem Fenster springen. What she was really worried about was having to clean up the mess if and when it happened. That had to be it. If not, it would mean she had no real idea why she could not get him out of her head.
とにかく変なやつなの。案外アリスと気が合うかも。
三問一回はいい言葉ね。
But from her eyes, it was clear that the question of whatever they would get along was irrelevant, given that they would never meet in the first place. Bit zweifelig irgendwie. Oko gave a non-committal response.
ところでアリス、さっきから何読んでるの？
霊的進化論の二次創作、スピリチュアルダイアリのまがいもの。
ああ、スウェーデンボリー。そんなの今更読んでも仕方ないんじゃない？
新書なら退屈だけど、これは偽書だから。彼の欠点と長所を劇的に褒め上げている。よくできた冒険小説のようよ。立ちはだかる秘密組織の名前がカントとか気が利いているわ。
Swedenborg sagt mir nichts. Aber Kant? Wie Immanuel Kant?
筆跡はあなたのおじいさんのものだけど。
へえ、あの人そういう趣味まであったんだ。割とユーモアがあったのね。惜しい人を亡くしたわ。
Augustino talk about how he her now deceased grandfather.
あなたのおじいさん、夏に頼りをくれたけど。
よしてよ、死んだものと考えたいのに。
Why can't that stay dead? Orko sighed and laid back on the sofa. The soft cushion caved in under her weight.
話は戻るけど
Alice shot a glance at Orko. Her body buried in the sofa, remained as still as a corpse. It was clear Orko had tuned out of the conversation. Alice suddenly just this her with a look. The more she thought about it, the less important the events of the day seemed to become. If you just ignored Alice, the conversation would end there. They would eventually get up and leave to this mistake unresolved for another day. However, that's not the kind of person Orko always like he was.
いいわよ。何？
She is still lying down.
今日できなかったのは少し痛いわね。
だから反省してるって。学校優先は一人前になってからでしょ。
ならいいけど。
The coldness in her voice made Orko gnash her teeth. She knew what Alice wanted to say. She knew better than anyone. The veneer she wrote for school was different than the way she lived at home. Well, it could be called hiding in plain sight. Alice thought it was silly. And what the silence told her was...
覚悟を決めろって言いたいのよね、あんたは。
To this fella was not a colossal one. She would just happen to be upset the delicate balance between her home and school lives, chasing one at the expense of the other. And yet the careless mistake was clear sign of Orko's lack of commitment.
アリスは関係ない。これは私が私で決めなくちゃいけないこと。
She had only known for sure for the last year and a half, but she had a hunch for as long as she could remember. Make the choice and the day will come. It was little wonder that her morals and conscientiousness had been stripped away. Orko pushed herself back up. She was met by Alice's cold beauty and wordless gaze.
オッケー、アリス。来週中に決着をつけよう。それでいいんでしょ？
ええ、青子がいいなら。
Orko could not help but shake her head, feeling like she was hearing something similar for the second time that day. Even in the comfort of her own, she couldn't banish thoughts of the country boy from her mind.
じゃあ下準備はよろしくね。私まだできないし。
場所は例の公園でいい？
妥当な線ね。あ、でももう一軒の方は？そっちの方が急務じゃない？
時と場合、森に変化があれば教えるわ。
After the brief exchange, Alice returned to her attention to the book in her lap. Shop talk was over. Now they could return to their normal relationship as roommates. Orko grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Since Alice was busy reading, Orko decided to tune into a variety show that had already started. Alice started to speak but suddenly cut herself off. One of the delicate hands raised to her mouth. She would always cut herself off the section list she was about to say something trivial. Sometimes her self-restraint would hit too late if she would make a gesture like the one she was making now. It occurred to Orko that the R sound her cute little roommate made just now was different than the "wa" she blurted in times past.
何？
Orko turned down the volume on the TV. Her intense eyes lit up like those of a mischievous cat.
どうということはないんだけど。
ないんだけど？
Alice looked away, bashfully not knowing if she should bring it up or not. It was times like these that her expression carried a real warmth and surprising charm. If he could see in this moment, Alice's father would have to admit that her name suited her perfectly.
今日帰ってくるときおかしなものを見て誰かに話そうと思っていたんだけど。
Orko nodded, beckoning her continue.
つまらない。本当に意味のないことよ。けど、どう考えてもそんなことをする理由がわからない。青子。人間ぐらいの大きな猫がひょこひょこ出前をする理由ってわかる？
A man-sized cat. For a second, I thought Alice was trying and failing miserably to make a joke again. One would think that about anyone, really. But she seemed completely serious. Even if Alice's sense of humor fell flat for Oko, this story already sounded more fanciful than Alice's usual attempt at jokes. Oko concluded that her roommate was talking about something she had actually seen.
その話には2つぐらい信じがたい部分があるけど。
いいの。私もからくりぐらいは思いつくから。ただ理由がわからないから聞いてるの。わざわざ精巧な猫のぬいぐるみを着て出前のてんやものを届けに行くことって、
難易度以前にそれをやる人間の常識性を疑うけどね、私は。
Alice nodded tentatively at her words.
世の中いろいろあるから、私たちみたいなのもいれば、下界から遮断された山奥で暮らしていたやつまで10人十色よ。私だったら見かけたら声かけて理由を尋ねただろうけど。
Alice's gaze drifted at that.
暮れゆく住宅街にさまよう出前猫か。で、今日の夕飯どうする？せっかく話が出たし、私らもてんやものにしようか。
Uncle laughed and take out at her face glowed as he spoke. They had no hard rules for dinner, but if one of them was in the mood to cook, they made it a point to make enough for two. At very worst, this meant entire weeks without dinner, but the two of them agreed that this was the system that worked best for them. Whether they found cooking to be much effort or simply liked ordering out. Nights like this one were a common occurrence, much to the chagrin of the restaurants of Misaki Town. Delivering to the mansion meant coming all the way up to the top of the hill, the source of the disgruntlement.
時間は8時前。ギリギリセーフね。私今月がいいな。あそこの月見そば最近ご無沙汰だったし。
The hungry student council president took out their many menus and excited to look for anything that stood out. Alice casually responded without sparing so much as a glance.
悪いけど、私夕飯済んでるの。
With those words, Oko froze. All the deliveries required a minimum of 2 items, so she was out of luck without an accomplice. Cruel society had decided it couldn't be bothered to deliver to a princess with only ordered a single serving of food. Incidentally, to counteract orders from Hilton Mansion, the restaurant has declared the minimum number of orders will be 3, starting next year. How could Alice was still in the dark to this fiendish change in direction?
この裏切り者。だから帰ってくるのが遅かったのね。帰宅部、学校までバス徒歩込みで片道20分のあんたがなんで5時以降に帰ってくんのか考えるべきだったわ。
After Shifauko, she had been thinking too out of it, even if to remember that she was the one who would fall asleep.
ああ、ひどい女。そういう時は残された一人のためにお土産買ってくるのが暗黙の了解だったのに。私だってこの前の外食の時はアリスの分も買ってきたじゃない。
It was Anna, how serious Oko was being, but she was visibly angry. She had already woken up hungry in the morning, and from the time she was called to school until now, she had consumed nothing but tea. It was a small miracle that her stomach was not growling. She knew it was her own fault, but she persisted, wanting to get revenge on Alice for scolding her earlier.
この前ってあれのこと？あなたが都心に出向いた時、夕食にお寿司を食べてきたのに、 お土産はなぜかコンビニエンスストアのビニール袋だったって話。
I got kicked a hornet nest.
何よ、買ってこないよりはマシでしょ。
真実は時に隠蔽すべきね。
Alice's icy gaze pierced right through her. Oak had suddenly crossed the line by going on and on about how the sushi circled around the restaurant while Alice ate her convenience store meal. But new things fascinated her, and she couldn't contain her curiosity towards the conveyor belt sushi shops that started popping up at that time. They were nothing short of miraculous. Even honesty can be a sin, given the right circumstances.
わかった、わかりました。じゃあ今回のは前のと帳消しってことでいいわね。
Alice went back to the book without so much as recognizing the question. The fact that she did not confirm it made Akko anxious.
仕方ない。今日は薬日だし、おとなしく台所に立って料理の腕を磨くとしましょう。
She stood up, announcing her intent to no one in particular.
聞き忘れてた。アリス、どこで夕食済ませたの？
Alice hand froze on the current page. She suddenly shut the book she was reading and stood up as if it winced at. She walked across the drawing room with a book in her hand. When she reached the door, she stopped and turned toward Aoko.
聞きたい。まあ、なんとなく。
Aoko nodded timidly, cowed by Alice's sudden vigor. Alice continued in a matter-of-fact way.
その猫が余ったメニューをくれたのよ。
And with that brief response, she left the room. It doesn't have to be normal. Little happening of last night. Da mal zur nächsten Episode. Chapter 2. Little happening last night.
けど慣れれば割と住みやすいとは思う。
Soshiro sighed listlessly. He looked down at the winter schoolyard below, lost the thought. December was written on the corner of the chalkboard. He could not believe 10 days had already passed since he transferred to school. The last vestige of autumn had faded with the change of the month. The trees were all but barren. At the ground below, the mat of the fallen leaves. Fourth period was classics, and an elderly teacher stood at the lectern and rambled on. While he had finally gotten used to the classroom, he still had a long way to go to get up to speed in his classes. Lacking even the basic understanding most students learn in their early school-lasting life, it was a battle for Soshiro to keep up. Even if he was unable to grasp all of the content right away, he at least tried to memorize everything in the hope that he could make use of it down the road. Which is why losing himself in his thought was about the last thing he should have been doing. He would normally chastise himself for daydreaming, but... troublingly, he was unable to concentrate in this class today. Soshiro could not place the source of his lack of concentration. It could not have been the winter in the city. It was much milder than in the mountains. Neither was his party shop particularly tiring. He was not to anyone physically fatigued every student, so they could not be either. Others might conclude it was because the courses were boring, but that seemed off the mark too. So she did not share his classmates' opinion about the classes. On the contrary, he never enjoyed the class time. Now his frame of mind was not to blame either. Try to figure out what was wrong only made him more depressed.
いけない。こんなんじゃ気が散る一方だ。
He scouted himself to turn his attention to the chalkboard. The arithmetic tricks of chalks were sending him into a slumber, but he somehow managed to resist the lullaby. And yet he was still unable to focus on the classes. So she reflected silently as he was his custom and sighed inward. Deep down he knew the real source of his agitation. The events of the previous night were the only thing it could be. With the chime to signal the end of class, the teacher bored and excited into the hallway. To see him off, the 30 or so students all stood up from the desks. The clock, which had seemed to slowly dramatically around 11:30, now struck not. The tension seemed to fade through the room all at once. The release from a difficult lesson. It was the start of a lunchtime, the highlight of school life. Misaki High's cafeteria was not particularly known for its quality of food. Complaints that the quality was below that of a private school went unheeded. And the same unique flavors appeared on the menu each and every day. Private school prices coupled with subpar quality led the majority of students to opt for boxed lunch instead. Sushiro's class 2C was no exception. The boys muscled as many as 10 desks into what resembled a long dining table. Conversely, girls divided themselves into smaller tables of 2 or 3 desks with practiced ease instead of chatting with the cliques. Not a single student wasted even a second of the precious lunchtime. While both sides differed in method, they shared a common goal. Toshiro was struck dumb after efficiency of the transformation. Even after 10 days, he was unable to keep pace with the rest of the class and remained seated where he had sat during the previous period. The voice came from the large makeshift dining table near the window. Hosuke Kinomi was beckoning him over while leaning back in his chair in a way that looked like he could fall backwards at any second. He was literally shut down by others in the class for being lazy and crass, but earnest. They should keep him from getting on anyone's bad side. Though something would be said for not being so forthcoming all the time too.
俺さ、昨日店の残り物もらいすぎたんだよ。春巻きだよ、春巻き。それを見た親父がさ、もらったもんは残すなってうるす。
It seems his end game was to find someone who might take pity on him and trade with him something better. Fuck! Wie speichern wir das mal ab? Okay, gut. Ah, Viereck. So, weil Ich werde jetzt mal duschen gehen. Vielleicht streame ich heute Abend noch weiter, vielleicht auch nicht. Dann mal adios und Pfiat.